Our very last kind of transformation is a rotation. When we have a rotation, that is when we are turning around a fixed point called our center of rotation. The figure rotates at a specific angle and a specific direction. Though the figure can rotate around any fixed point, the most common point is our origin. So that's what we're going to look at. Remember, our origin is 0, 0. We have three different kinds of rotation about our origin. We have a 90 degrees rotation, 180 degree rotation, and 270 degree rotation. When we do this, we are always going counterclockwise unless they tell us that we are going clockwise. So we're always assuming that it's counterclockwise. When we have a 90 degree rotation, the rule that we are using is x comma y, our ordered pair, turns into negative y comma x. For 180 degree rotation, we're taking x comma y and turning it into negative x comma negative y. For a 270 degree rotation, we are taking x comma y and turning it into y comma negative x. If you can remember these rules, you'll be able to do our rotations. Now, when it says negative x or negative y, that means the opposite. So if it's already negative, our opposite would be turning it into a positive. If we look at a few examples, our first example, we were given a triangle, and they told us that we want to rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise. So if I take my points, remember a counterclockwise 90 degree rotation says that I am doing negative y comma x. So I'm taking my x comma y, I'm flipping them around, and then I am doing the opposite sign for y. So 2 comma 7 flips to 7 comma 2, and then I'm going to negate or do the opposite of 7 and do negative 7. For B, I'm switching 6 and 5, and then I am making 5 the opposite, so negative 5. For C, I'm switching 1 and 4, and then I'm making 1 negative. For number 2, we have a 180 degree rotation that we want to do for our square. 180 degrees means that I am doing the opposite of x and y. So x and y get to stay where they are, but we're doing the opposite sign. Instead of 2 comma 6, p prime turns into negative 2, negative 6. For q prime, instead of positive 6, 5, it's negative 6, 5. R becomes negative 5, negative 1, and S becomes negative 1, negative 2. With example number 3, we have a 270 degree counterclockwise rotation. When I do that, my rule is to do y comma negative x. So I am switching where x and y are, and then I am doing the opposite for my x. So 3 and 4 switch to 4 comma 3, and then 3 becomes negative. For K, 4 and 6 are going to switch, and then 6 becomes negative. L, 1 and 8 are going to switch, and 8 becomes negative. For M, 1 and 1, even if we switch it, it's still 1 and 1, but then I'm going to change it to 1 comma negative 1. So it's not too bad once we remember those rules. Again, problems, that could be really helpful. With number 4, we're doing 180 degree rotation, so we are going to do the opposite for x and y. That becomes negative 3, positive 2, negative 6, negative 1, and negative 5, comma, positive 7. 5, I have a 270-degree rotation, so I'm doing y comma negative x. I am switching 5 and negative 5, and then I am making negative 5 positive. D, I'm switching 7 and negative 1, and then making negative 1 positive. E and F are going to work that same exact way. For number 6, we have a 90-degree rotation. For our 90-degree rotation, we're switching our x and our y, and then making that y negative. So negative 1 and negative 3 switch to negative 1 comma negative 3, and then the negative 1, which is my y, would change to positive 1. For u, I'm switching the x and the y, and then I'm making whatever the original y was positive. So it's going to turn into 2 comma 0. V and W are going to work that same exact way. When we do 7, 8, 9, and 10, that's going to be the same process. So as long as you remember your rules, you'll be in good shape. I am just going to show you those answers so you can check it with your own work. Remember, with a 180-degree rotation, we are doing negative x, negative y. With a 90-degree rotation, we are doing negative y comma x. And for 270-degree rotation, we are doing y comma negative x. So we're flip-flopping things and then turning things into negative and or positive. 11 and 12 are also examples that I am just going to show you so you can check your work. But I do want to talk very quickly about those clockwise examples. So if we have a clockwise example, we want to figure out what that would be with our original counterclockwise example. If I do a 90-degree clockwise rotation from my pre-image to my image, ending up in the 4th quadrant is the same thing as if I were to do a 270-degree counterclockwise rotation. Using that information, we can use our rule to figure out what our new ordered pairs are. So that's why we want to figure out what it would be if we were doing our normal counterclockwise rotation. 90-degree clockwise is 270-degree counterclockwise. 270-degree counterclockwise means that I'm taking my x and y, I'm switching it so it's y and then x, and I'm negating my x, or I'm doing the opposite sign. So 5 and 1 switch to 5 comma 1, and then that 1 turns into negative 1. 8 and 3 switch to 8 comma 3, and that 3 turns into negative 3. 8 and 1 switch to 1 comma 8, and that 8 turns into negative 8. The other clockwise example we have is a 270-degree counterclockwise rotation. So if it's just regular 270-degree clockwise rotation, we want to figure out what that would be for our counterclockwise. That's going to end up being a 90-degree, so it's sort of backwards. If we do a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation, our rule is to do negative y comma x. So I'm switching 2 and negative 7, and then I'm making that 2 negative. For negative 5 and 6, I'm switching it to 6 comma negative 5, and I'm making the 6 negative. And then I and j are going to work the same way. So the key to doing our rotations is really remembering these rules. If you remember these rules, you'll be able to do any and all of the rotations. Again, rotation is another rigid motion of our transformations.